Today we're going to test out the best way to store strawberries. So this video is inspired by my original video that I did way back in 2012 on how to store strawberries using a vinegar bath and the best way for keeping them fresh for a long time. However, I wanted to put that method to the test. Similarly, I recently tested avocados the same way and tested out 12 different ways to store a cut avocado to surprisingly find the best way was boiling it. So this whole video is about that same sort of experiment. So we're going to walk through this in two different ways. We're going to test out how to wash the strawberries, the best way to wash them to prevent them from molding once they're in the fridge. And then secondly, we're going to test how to store them. A couple different methods from a mason jar to a paper lined dish to see what works best for storing the strawberries. The thing about this video is I really wanted to just put every method that I could find on the internet to the test, and we're going to do that now. So the reason that we're testing out the few different ways that you can actually wash strawberries is because there's so many different opinions out there what's the best way to keep those berries fresh. So everything from using vinegar to baking soda to just using plain old hot water. We're going to try all different methods, 6 in total. The first method is the easiest. It's just the control method. We're not going to do anything at all. We're just going to see if that berry, how long it lasts without doing anything to it after we bring it home from the store. The second method is actually using hot water. We're going to bring hot water up to about 140 degrees, and then we're going to pour that over the berries. The thought behind this is that that hot water will kill any bacteria or like microbes or anything like that, so that way that the berries will not actually mold. So just like the control method, the next thing we're going to do is rinse the berries. This is straight up just taking the berries and rinsing them with tap water. It's not hot, it's not treated, it's just straight up tap water. Next method up is we're going to try using a vinegar bath. With the vinegar bath, you take 3 parts water, 1 part vinegar, soak the berries in that solution for about 15 minutes. Now the thing is, people often ask, is it going to taste like vinegar? No, berries are like mostly water. And so you'd have to soak those berries in that solution for hours and hours and hours before it's going to absorb that vinegar taste. The 15 minutes that's in there is just about killing the bacteria and any sort of mold spores that are on the berries. Next, we're going to try baking soda. Similar to the vinegar method, we're just going to take some water, we're going to add baking soda to it, and we're going to soak the berries for about 15 minutes. Baking soda has actually been proven to remove pesticides from produce even more so than bleach. So I'm kind of curious to see how this method turns out. And then lastly, we're going to try the method that I did back in 2012, and that was a combination of baking soda and vinegar, soaking the berries in that solution, and then fully drying them and storing them. Okay, so we're going to try all of those methods, and do you want to guess who the winner is? Okay, so I tested out my 6 different ways for washing strawberries. As I mentioned, this is how you prepare the strawberries for just plopping them in the refrigerator and seeing which method is going to actually keep them the freshest, the longest. Now, for these 6 different methods, for the most part, the berries kind of stayed the same for about 2 weeks. They all kind of looked pretty good. I was actually quite surprised, and I want to make a note about that. So when you're buying this produce, especially if you're buying it from the grocery store, you don't know how long it's been on the truck at the store. There's no real way to tell. You know, if you're buying from a farmer's market, those ingredients are probably going to be a lot fresher than from the grocery store. So when you bring those berries home, there's probably going to be some sort of delta between when they were picked and when you actually get them that might affect these actual times if you did the experiment yourself. But for the most part, they looked pretty darn good at 14 days. It was really at 21 days where I really started to see certain berries take a twist. Now let me talk about those results. So day 21, the control group actually still looked pretty good. These were the berries I didn't do anything to. I just took them out of the container and I put them in the other container. I did nothing to them. However, the rinsed berries, I was actually surprised at how poorly they were looking. I think the reason for that is the rinsed berries, I probably just maybe didn't get them dry enough. The water was still on them. And as I mentioned, water is the enemy. So if they're still wet and they're in the refrigerator, they're just going to start to spoil faster. The one that really surprised me was the hot water bath. So the hot water bath, at this point, they started to look like cooked berries. Now, up until this point, they were actually looking pretty decent. I actually actually thought the hot water bath might be the winner. I was wrong. The hot water bath looked like cooked berries. The vinegar one was doing pretty well still. It looked really, really good, the same as it did the full 14 to 21 days. It was nice, plump, juicy. I still wanted to eat those berries. The baking soda and the mix of the baking soda and vinegar coming in second here. They were looking okay. There was definitely some signs of decay. By day 22, you really started to see even more changes. Those vinegar berries were still looking pretty darn good, but those hot water bath berries, man, they were not ready for this. They were downhill. So I do not recommend the hot water bath method. I've seen that around the internet. I've seen it, hey, this is the way to do it. It's easy. It's not. It just cooks the berries. It's good for maybe a good week, then they start to turn. By day 23, most of the methods were showing signs of decay. We were seeing a lot of the berries, they weren't quite moldy, but we were seeing a lot of the berries take a turn. However, the vinegar one was still going. By the last day, the day I ended the experiment, at this point, most everything had given up except for the berries washed in vinegar, which is why that method was the best. Washing your berries in 3 parts water, 1 part vinegar, soaking them for 15 minutes, taking them out, make sure you get them thoroughly dry, and then store them in the fridge. And it looks like those berries, I believe the vinegar berries from this experiment could have lasted at least a month. They're the clear winner. Okay, so we tested out how to wash the berries and we have our winner from that. Now we're gonna test out how to store the berries. So strawberries in general, they like being cold. They like being cold and they are not sensitive to ethylene gas. So you don't have to worry about storing them next to avocados or apples or tomatoes or anything like that. But actually, outside of being kind of soft and tender, they're quite durable when it comes to that part. So now we're gonna test out how to actually store these berries. We're gonna store them in everything from the original container that they came in to a mason jar into a glass jar that's sealed. So for the sake of this experiment, just to limit how many different things that we're testing, I didn't try anything where the container was actually open because that would just cause the berries to dry out. Also for this part of the experiment, just to have everything kind of be equal, I washed all of the berries in the baking soda solution. I'm not saying that was the winner, I'm just saying that's the one that I used for testing out these storage containers. So we started off using the original container. I took the container that the berries came in. We had washed them, fully dried them, which is key to storing berries. You wanna make sure that they're completely dry. You can do this by taking the berries and putting them in a salad spinner that's lined with a towel and spinning out all the moisture. You can also use a blow dryer or whatever. You just wanna make sure that the berries are fully dry. They don't like any moisture, so putting them in the fridge, even slightly wet, they're gonna spoil a lot faster. So I took those original berries, washed them, dried them, put them back in their original container. And we also did the same thing with those berries, washed them, dried them, put them back in their original container, this one lined with a paper towel, so 2 different ways. Because strawberries like relative humidity, this next version we tried a couple different ways. So this one I'm using a storage container, which we sealed with a lid. So in one way, we took the storage container, put the berries in there and sealed it. The next version, we took the same berries, put them in a paper towel lined storage container and also sealed it. And then we repeated that same process with both containers, except for we left the lid a little bit ajar so that way some of the moisture could escape. Because as I mentioned, the strawberries do not want to be wet. It's the worst way to store them in the fridge. The next version that we tried is with a mason jar. So we took a mason jar, lined it with a paper towel, stacked in the berries, and then sealed it up. Conversely, we took another mason jar, no paper towel, put the strawberries in it, and then sealed that and put them in the fridge. All of these versions, from the original container to the storage container with the lid to the mason jar, are going in the fridge after we wash and dry the berries. And then the last method is to actually take the strawberries and to lay them out on a single layer on a tray where they have space in between them. So we tried that once with a paper towel and once without a paper towel. And then we covered this with a plastic wrap to keep the berries so they were not exposed to the air in the refrigerator. I tried all of these different options and I was actually surprised by the results. We stored them in the original container. We stored them in mason jars. We did the tray trick. We stored them in containers that were sealed, containers that were ajar. We tried it with paper towels, without paper towels. So before I get to the winner, let me just tell you about some of the things I learned. I expected the paper towel to actually help the berries. Paper towels are integral when it comes to storing greens like spinach, arugula, that sort of thing. The paper towel keeps that moisture away and keeps those greens fresh and crisp. I thought the same thing was going to happen with the berries. They're very tender, they're delicate, they're a snowflake, they're kind of a Republican. Sorry if any of you are Republicans. They're just not great, you know, and so they like to actually spoil faster. So I thought the paper towel was actually going to be a winner. It was not. It worked for a few days, but actually it seemed to just make things worse after day 21. The paper towel was not the way to go. The other thing I thought was like, okay, when you see containers of berries in the store, they're not typically sealed, right? They're perforated, there's airflow. So I thought the containers that had the lid ajar were actually going to be better than the ones that were sealed. Turns out that was also not true. The ajar lids did not do as well. And lastly was the mason jar. Now I've tried this trick so many times because I keep seeing it on Pinterest, I see it on Twitter, I see it on Instagram. I have people tell me I store them in mason jars and they last forever. And I've tried it and they don't last forever. So I thought, well, okay, here, I'm putting it to the test. The mason jar was great for a little bit, but once those berries started to turn, all of the berries in the mason jar went faster than anything else. The winner, the clear winner, was a airtight sealed container with no paper towel. The berries in that container could have kept going. While everything else was getting fuzzy to the point where you might actually have to name it, these berries were fresh, plump, and still looking edible by day 25. So what's the best way to store your berries? Well, here's what I think. Wash them in that vinegar solution. This is the combination of both. Take the vinegar solution where you do 3 parts water, 1 part vinegar, soak them for 15 minutes. That kills all those mold spores. Take those berries, fully dry them, and then store them in a sealed container in the fridge. Stored that way, I think your berries, they could last for over a month that way. So that's the best way to store strawberries. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If there's something that you want to see, drop a comment below. And if you like to cook like I do, I release new videos every single week. See you guys soon.